Located today on the expansive grounds of the Genesee Country Village Museum, this stately house has experienced a great deal during its nearly 200-year existence. The home was constructed in 1827 in the fashionable federal style of architecture for James Livingston, a Rochester entrepreneur who made his fortune from milling, banking, and land speculation. The house was one of the first grand mansions built in what would become Rochester's Third Ward. Located in an area christened Livingston Park, on 3/4 of an acre of land, the home was separated only by a few blocks from the bustling commercial and lower-class residential structures along the Erie Canal waterfront. Many of the city's most influential and prosperous families soon afterwards built homes of their own near it. In 1835, Livingston sold the house to prosperous businessman Joseph Strong, who 3 years later went on to sell it for $10,000 to Frederick Backus. Dr. Backus was a prominent early settler who came to what was then known as Rochesterville in 1816 after concluding his studies at Yale to be a doctor. Doctoring in those early years on the New York frontier was grueling, with contagious diseases like the Genesee fever, most likely caused by typhoid or malaria, creating a constant scourge. Soon after arriving, the doctor became a pillar in the community. Along with establishing a private medical practice, he was selected by community leaders as the first treasurer of the village. Appointed in 1817, he was re-elected annually to the position for the next 11 years. He was also one of the charter members of the Monroe County Medical Society. In 1818, Dr. Backus married Rebecca Ann Fitzhugh. Rebecca was from a prominent family. Her father was William Frisbee Fitzhugh, a former Maryland planter who, in 1803, along with fellow land speculators Charles Carroll and Nathaniel Rochester, purchased the original 100-acre tract of land used to establish the city of Rochester. Once married, the Backuses moved into a home on Fitzhugh Street to start raising a family. Frederick and Rebecca were very close with members of their rather extended family. The Fitzhugh clan often came to Rochester for visits. It was during one of these visits that Dr. Backus's brother-in-law, Garrett Smith, was introduced to Rebecca's sister, Anne Fitzhugh. Garrett's wife, Weltha, had died in 1819, and, as his grief started to soften, he began to court Anne. The two married in Rochester on January 3, 1822. The bonds between sisters, Rebecca and Anne, and shared experiences between Garrett and Frederick strengthened the relationships between the families. Letters flew between the two families, sharing updates on domestic matters along with the growing political and social issues of importance to each family. Over time, Garrett became one of the leading social reformers and abolitionists of the 19th century. His staunch radical abolitionist views often clashed with the more moderate anti-slavery views of the Backus family. The Backuses spent 20 years in their Fitzhugh Street residence, but by 1838, the increasing population and expanding business concerns in the city prompted the family to search for a new home, removed from the close proximity to the Erie Canal and working-class neighborhoods. The former residence of James Livingston in Livingston Park was ideal. Once they moved in, Dr. Backus remodeled the house, adding Greek Revival details, changed the entrance from the front to the side of the house, and expanded the interior to form a double parlor. In 1844, the doctor entered what he referred to as a new era of my life. He was elected to the state senate. As a senator, he served as chairman of 2 senate committees which he felt passionately about. One regulating medical societies and hospitals for the mentally ill, and the other on regulating state prisons and houses of refuge. Writing to a cousin in 1845, Dr. Backus said, "I am laboring to obtain more houses of refuge for juvenile delinquents." His efforts were successful the following year. The state legislature passed an act authorizing the establishment of the Western House of Refuge, which over the next 2 years erected a building for the institution near Rochester. Upon leaving office, Dr. Backus was elected as president of the Board of Managers and served in that post until his death in 1858. After her husband's death, Rebecca continued to live in her Rochester home until 1860, when she sold the property to Philip and Cathro Curtis for $8,000 and moved to a house in Geneva near her daughter Weltha Brent. The Curtises immediately started transforming the house on Livingston Park into one of the city's most prestigious schools for girls. Cathro had been operating a girls' school on nearby South Fitzhugh Street, and her husband Philip was superintendent of public schools in Rochester. For their renovations of the house, the rear wing of the building was removed, replaced with a 2.5-story brick addition, which housed classroom space for the first floor and small bedchambers on the second. The house's double parlors became reception and reading rooms. The dining room became additional classroom space. Kitchen facilities were moved into the basement of the brick addition. Once completed, Cathro Curtis served as principal of the Livingston Park Seminary for Girls for 32 years until her death in 1892. The seminary continued to operate until 1934. By that time, the area around the school had lost its prestige and luster.
The once grand homes were shabby and tarnished. The neighborhood, once the center of power and influence in the 1830s, was described in the 1930s as an anachronistic bit of gentility. In 1935, the old building was purchased for $7,000 by Reverend Richard Coway for use as a Gospel Tabernacle Mission, an organization known today as the Rochester Family Mission. The Coway family lived in the front of the home and conducted services in the brick addition. The Coways made some alterations to the house, including wiring for electricity, since it was still being lit by gas lighting. In 1954, the Rochester Institute of Technology purchased the house and lot from the Coway family with plans to demolish the building to make room for an expansion of the campus. The planned demolition mobilized a few of the city's influential residents to preserve the home. Harwood Brownell Dreyer, an architect and president of the Rochester Historical Society, along with members of the Society for Preservation of Landmarks, convinced RIT to delay the demolition until the building could be dismantled and preserved. In a few short weeks, $30,000 was raised to cover the cost of the dismantlement. Local philanthropist James Sibley Watson agreed to pay for the storage of the structure in several warehouses. In December 1954, the home began to be taken carefully apart, piece by piece, and placed into storage, there to remain until a new site and adequate funds could be found to re-erect it. Harwood Dreyer led efforts to find the building a new home, but it wouldn't be until almost 15 years later that he found one for the house. Dreyer met with Stuart Bollinger, director of the Genesee Country Village Museum, in 1968. Bollinger and the museum's founder, John O'Whaley, were in the process of creating a living history museum in Mumford, New York. The museum at that time contained 9 19th century buildings moved to the location from various towns throughout western New York, and Bollinger was interested in adding more structures to the site. A deal was struck, and reassembly of the Livingston-Backus house began in 1970. Dreyer worked closely with Bollinger and the museum carpentry crew as they re-erected the structure. The decision was made at that time to restore the house to its appearance before it became a seminary. Genesee Country Village Museum opened to the public in 1976, with the Livingston-Backus house as a showpiece. Interpreted as an elegant city house, today's visitors can tour its furnished period rooms, watch demonstrations of open-hearth cooking and beehive oven baking in its kitchen, and learn about the people who once called this building home. For nearly 200 years, the Livingston-Backus house has been a showplace of elegance and prestige. The house has survived countless changes, decline, relocation, and even a couple of fires. Through all these events, its architecture and historical importance has remained undiminished.